Let me start by saying I don't see this as a football film per se, or a football hooligan film. There's an element of it in there. But within that, I have done a couple of films like that. So I didn't want to do another film where you've got the A team against the B team and they have a fight and then probably have another fight and then whichever one we're supposed to like walks off into the sunset without a missing tooth or a scratch and he's the hero. I didn't want to do that. If we were going to do this and go down a well-trodden path, it had to be an element of something new. So that element for me, and I'm sure us, was wham bam, thank you, and then goes home. And then has to go and, he has to go and hide the blood on him, or he's limping, he has to hide that, or the guilt when he puts his son to bed and thinks, am I being an idiot, risking myself and risking your livelihood and all that. That was the drama. And that's really what appealed for me.
The voice you just heard was that of award-winning actor Leo Gregory speaking about the 2014 film Top Dog, starring himself, directed by Martin Kemp. Screenplay was penned by Dougie Brimson, who was also the author of the 2013 novel of the same name. Dougie Brimson is also joining us today to talk all things Top Dog. Welcome to the Adapted to Screen podcast. I am Ritchie.
I am Philip.
In this podcast, we take a book and its on-screen counterpart. We take it apart, we talk about it, we dissect it, we have a bit of banter in the process. And today we have the book and the film Top Dog to talk about. Top Dog was written, both the film and the book were written by Dougie Brimson. And to join us today to talk about all things Top Dog, we have the man himself, Dougie Brimson. Hello, Dougie. How are you? It's good to have you with us.
I'm very well, thank you.
This one's been a long time in the making. You are a very busy person, from what we can tell.
Yeah, life is a bit crazy lately. Not book-wise, just film stuff, really. It's exciting, though. Exciting times.
Since Green Street and Top Dog, has film become your main thing now?
Yeah, I mean, the publishing world became a bit problematic. It was moving in a specific direction, and that direction didn't really involve literature for working class blokes, and there seems to be less and less of it these days. And it became more and more difficult to convince people to keep doing the kind of stuff that I wanted to do. And as more and more interest in film work came along, I took the decision to do more scripts, to work on more scripts. And then the pandemic hit, and I wrote a couple more scripts during the first chunk of the pandemic. And then I thought, why not just try and get some of these away? And so I set up my own film company, and literally within a day, I had to buy it on a script, and we were off and running, and we haven't really slowed down since.
Well, that's extremely fortuitous for you, Dougie. Obviously, you've done around about 15 books in total, and I think your filmography stands at around about, is it 4 features?
No, there's 3 features and 3 shorts.
That's correct. Sorry, 6 in total. I do apologise, of course. And obviously, by the sounds of it, a lot more to come.
I hope so. I've got 3 or 4 features in development at the moment, just waiting for... We had a yes on one today, actually.
Oh, congratulations.
So thank you. So we're going to be doing that, and then I'm waiting for another yes on another one.
And obviously, if there's any characters or any parts for like a couple of dummy brummies, then obviously me and Ritchie can fill those spots for you, no problem.
Yeah, I'll put you top of my list.
Thank you very much.
With the strike, it might be quite handy, actually.
Very true. Yes. Yeah. Have car will travel. Dougie, actually, something I didn't know until I was doing my research is that and. Not just quickly, I'll just mention this. You wrote We Still Kill the Old Way back in 2014 release for that movie. I saw that a few years ago. Absolutely loved that. I thought it was brilliant. I thought you had some great characters, some fantastic actors as well, particularly the young lad who was the menacing chap because I think that was one of his first roles as well, and I thought he was so good in that.
Yeah, he's Danny Hatchard. He's a brilliant actor. He went into EastEnders shortly after that for a while.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's a great young actor. He's got a big future. I don't know why we don't see more of him, actually. You've just actually, I'll put him on my list of people.
Underneath me and Richie, though, Dougie. Yeah, underneath me and Richie.
Obviously.
So, Dougie, just before we move on to the standard format, I thought we'd play a little game. It's called the yes-no game. I'm going to read out some actors' names, and all you've got to say is yes or no if they have spoken words on screen which you have written. Are you all right with that?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so first on the list, Charlie Hunnam.
Yes.
Elijah Wood.
Yes.
Claire Forlani.
Yes.
Ian Ogilvy.
Yes.
Star of A View to a Kill and Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Alison Doody.
Yes.
Star of Highlander and Braveheart, James Cosmo.
Yes.
Stephen Burkoff.
Yes.
Joan Collins.
Yes.
Brad Pitt.
No.
We can't have it all, can we, Dougie?
Not yet.
Not yet. Oh, exclusive. This is the part of the podcast where I normally do the author's bump, where I just do a little overview of the author of the book that we're covering. I think it'd probably be a little bit disrespectful to do it while you're sitting there, Dougie. So if you could reduce your life's work into about 30 seconds for our audience, that would be fantastic.
Okay, I served 18 years in the Royal Air Force, left in 1994, got some work as an extra on film and TV. My younger brother and I had an idea for a book, a non-fiction book about football in the build-up to Euro 96. We wrote that. It got published. It was a big success. We did loads more. I moved into fiction, did a book called The Crew, and then I got involved in Green Street and carried on doing films and books ever since.
That is absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Dougie. Just for the listeners, Dougie mentioned his brother there. His brother is Eddie Brimson, who was a previous guest on our podcast, which you can check out in the archives, which was Running with the Firm versus the movie ID.
Just out of interest, did you like that film?
Which one? Running with the Firm?
Yeah.
Or ID?
ID.
Well, both, I suppose.
There was two, weren't there?
Oh, yeah. Well, no, we're not talking about ID2. We're just talking about the one with Reece Dinsdale.
No, I didn't like it.
Oh, really?
No. I know people rave about it, and I'm very aware that Green Street is a contentious movie in certain circles. But I didn't like ID. I just thought it was kind of all contrived, not all that gumbo nonsense, just like...
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, the fact that was... I mean, that's one of the things that obviously we'll talk to you about the differences between the movies and why things are put into movies that aren't in the book and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But we're going to do the synopsis. I can't say that word. I don't even know why I try. We're going to do the synopsis for Top Dog, but I'm going to do it in my little cinema voice.
Yeah, disclaimer, Dougie, it's going to sound absolutely fucking awful when he does it now, but once I've done all the editing over it and put the music behind and everything, it's going to sound brilliant.
Okay, cool.
London bad boy Billy Evans gets in over his head when he joins a dangerous criminal gang.
That
That's what's on IMDb, and I always go with what's on IMDb because then we have to do the cast, and the cast is right there. So I'm very clever indeed. Yes. So for the cast of Top Dog, we have Leo Gregory playing Billy Evans, Ricky Hartnett playing Mickey, Tom Davis playing Cod, Jason Fleming playing Dan, and Vincent Regan playing Watson, along with Johnny Palomero as PJ, Lorraine Stanley as Julie. Most people will recognise her from her many years on EastEnders, and Tom Coulson as Barman Tom.
Ace.
Yes, excellent stuff. So now we're going to move into the differences, but it's a little bit different this week because we have the author of both the film and the movie on. Now, Dougie, just from my research, is Top Dog a Billy Evans trilogy, or would you class it as a Billy Evans trilogy?
No, Top Dog is the second book in a trilogy. Although it's, you can read The Crew, Top Dog, and In the Know, which is the final book.
Okay.
You can read them all as standalones, but there's references certainly in Top Dog and The Crew in it, and In the Know there are references to the previous books.
Okie dokie.
Obviously better if you read all three, but not least because of the development of the Billy Evans character.
Okay. Now, again, this is just my research. Is there a 19-year gap between Top Dog and In the Know?
Yes.
Is that a gap that you kept within the book, or is it kind of like 6 months later from...
No, I don't think it's 19 years, 9 years maybe.
No, okay, maybe I've written it down incorrectly. I do apologise. I had it down as 2001 for Top Dog and 2020 for In the Know, but that's when I use things like Wikipedia, you see, Dougie.
No, 2001 I think was the... Yeah, it might be. Jesus Christ.
Sorry, have I made you feel old now?
Well, you have, because, I mean, in 2 years' time, it's 20 years since Green Street came out.
No, that is very true. Yeah,
Yeah,
that is
that's
very true
very
indeed.
So, no, the reason there was a long gap was because I was never going to do it. It was purely because I was getting a lot of people ask me, you know, what happened to Billy Evans and et cetera, et cetera. And I had this idea for a story that I was going to do about something as a standalone book. More and more people were asking me, you know, is there a third book? Is there a third book? So I wrapped that story really into Billy Evans' character, and it became the third book in the trilogy. But really, it was only going to be the 2 books initially.
Okay, that's very interesting. The book Top Dog, it's about 300 pages, so it's a standard kind of size book. I think if you're reading a Jack Reacher book as an example, it's around about 330 pages. So we're at proper book thickness here with Top Dog.
Is that the correct technical term, is it, Phil? Proper book thickness?
Yeah, I think so. Spinage. Can you call it spinage?
What's the spinage on your book?
about half a hand. Dougie, if you were to film a 300-page book as it was, what kind of film time do you think that would be?
It's funny you should say that, because... and I know we're going to cross over now, because there's a lot of crossover and it's going to be in this discussion.
Of course.
When I got approached to adapt the book, I crammed everything in the book into the script. And then Martin Kemp came on board as a director, and he called me. I got a phone call from him one night. And he said, yeah, I've got the script. I've just gone through it. Can you come over and we'll go through it? And I said, yeah, great. When? He said, well, come over now. So, and he lives not far from me. So I went over to his palatial manor, which is what it is. And he proceeded to tear the script I'd written apart, literally redlined pretty much every page.
Did you beat him up at this point, Dougie?
No, because I was just absolutely gutted. You know, because I put so much work into the script and making sure that all these, because there's 3 distinctive threads in the book. Mm-hmm. If you've read it, you'll know, or listened to it.
Yes, yeah. And
I'd wrapped all of those into the script, which for a movie is really an hour and a half. You know, it's 102 pages and it's a page a minute. And when it had finished, and I was literally, you know, devastated in a pool of depression on his office floor, he said, "This script is brilliant." And I said, "You just ripped it apart for 3 hours. Like, what the freaking hell?" And he said, "No, everything I've done is designed to make this script better." He said, "Because you've got 3 storylines in here and you can only put one in. There's only room in a movie for one, you know, one story. So you've got to pick the best one. I've picked the best one." He said, "Go away and have a read, do a rewrite on it, and then I'll have another read and we'll come back." So I went away and sulked for about 10 days. And then when I started working on it, I realized he was absolutely right about everything he said. It taught me an awful lot. He's really, I mean, Martin Kemp, everyone thinks of him as a Spandau Ballet man, you know, an EastEnders barman. He's a very, very talented director. He doesn't do enough directing.
Good on Gogglebox as well.
He's just a good guy. He's just a really, really nice guy. He's good at everything he does.
Well, it's actually quite funny that Ritchie should lean on Gogglebox, where I think I'm more familiar, obviously, with Spandau Ballet, but obviously the craze. One of my more favourite films, Waxwork 2, Lost in Time, which he did, and I think he did another film. It's something to do with the yachts. Which I really enjoyed as well. I think that's when he and Gary were going across America and doing some, because obviously Gary Kemp ended up in Bodyguard. But I was interested, Dougie, and now that you brought it up, well, first of all, how did Martin Kemp end up as the director of the movie? And do you have any... Okay, let's go back. How were you approached to adapt the book into the movie, first of all?
I was approached In fact, I was talking to Leo. Leo and I had been wanting to do something else for a while, and we talked about a few things. And he had been approached by a producer who wanted to work with him, and Leo dragged me along to the meeting, but he didn't really want to meet me anyway. He just wanted to meet Leo. He'd never met him before, and so we pitched at the meeting. We pitched the idea to him, and he just bit our hands off really, and said, let's do it. And it was quite quick. He brought Martin in. I thought, he knew this guy, the producer. He knew Martin. They were mates. And it was from when I heard about it, when his name was mooted to me, and we'd met a few potential directors. When his name was suggested, my first thought was, can he do it? And I was assured he could. But also the fact first we're going to get a banging soundtrack, but we're also going to get really, really good publicity.
Well, yeah, 100%.
And it's all about publicity. And then we met, meeting him and talking to him. We had a long conversation on the phone. I think he was in south of France or somewhere. And he told us his vision for the movie. And it was a no-brainer from then on. It was, let's do it.
Well, normally, if I meet clients, I have like lunch in like Guildford or like Somerset, but you obviously just pop to the south of France for a quick business meeting.
I wish I was in a ropey office in Soho and he was in the south of France and speaking to us over a speaker. But it was. He's a good guy. He did a good job.
So when you've had the conversation, now, it's right, let's turn Top Dog into a movie. And then they say, right, Dougie, would you like to write the script? Or we've got someone who wants to write the script? Or do you go, yes, but only if I write the script? How does that negotiation work?
There was no way I wasn't going to write the script. I was so familiar with the story. I wanted to do another movie. I wanted to get another movie out to prove I could still do it. And there was no way I wasn't going to do it. I didn't even consider the idea of anybody else. And to be fair, and it's been proven time and time again, from the writer of Green Street has some clout.
Oh, 100%. Of course he does.
So whatever you think of Green Street, and as I said, I'm well aware that some people think it's absolutely crap. But I just said, right, I'll do it. How much are you going to pay me? How's it going to work? And let's go. And that was it. He was off and running.
So when you were talking to Martin regarding the actual script, what kind of, I think you might have mentioned it just when you earlier on, how many pages had you written? And had you written it in book form, or had you...
No, it was a book first.
No, sorry, what I mean is when you were writing the script, were you taking all of the, like, did you just go, right, this is the book and now I'm going to turn it into the script, or were you adding little bits yourself to...
No, yeah, it was a straight adaptation. I thought the story in the books really strong. The story arc's really strong. I knew the ending. I always write the ending first, always.
Oh, that's interesting.
So I knew how it ended. I knew what Billy's story arc was going to be. I was so familiar with the story after doing The Crew as well. I was so familiar with the character that it was a no-brainer, really. It was everything I wanted to say was in there,
Which do you prefer out of the two? Do you prefer writing novels, or do you prefer screenwriting?
Screenwriting. Novels they're completely different beasts. With a novel, you're in control of everything. You've even got some input into the cover, what goes on the cover, you've got an editor to work with. But in terms of the content, you're quite autocratic, for want of a better word. With a screenplay, I might as well write them in pencil, because every word is open to discussion or change. And I'm not precious about scripts at all. Not even with Top Dog. I knew what I wanted to do. I knew what the story was. I knew the story was strong enough for me to be able to carry it through. There was no way anyone was going to be able to improve on the basic core story of Billy's development. But as soon as Martin, as I said before, as soon as Martin came on board, it's his movie. It's not my movie anymore. And so my job as a screenwriter is to work with the director and give him what he wants to see on screen.
Okay.
And that's the process. And it's interesting, it's an interesting question, because for a lot of writers who try and adapt their own stuff, they struggle with that because they've got no control of what happens. And with a script, it isn't just the director. A producer can have an input. You can Investors can have an input. It depends how strong you are to stand up for things. I mean, there's going to be things in a script, in any script, which as a writer you can say, no, that's got to stay. That's got to stay because it's core to this development or that character. It's a core part of their story. But the rest of it, if they want to change it, they'll change it. And if they don't change, if you don't change it, they'll sack you and bring someone in who will. That's the harsh reality.
Okay, so the screenplay isn't something that's set in stone then. I mean, you could be halfway through filming a film and people can still be making changes to the script halfway through.
Yeah. You can be changing stuff as they're setting the camera up. It's changing dialogue. I like to leave one of the first bit of advices I got when I started screenwriting was always leave the actor with something to do. That's their job, so let them do it. So if you give them, a bit of free rein to actually develop their own dialogue and work, do a bit of work with them so it's authentic. One of the interesting things we did on Top Dog was we employed a lot of lads in inverted commas, proper football lads that I knew, Leo knew, people we got off Facebook, who I'd known for a while. And we got them to come to the set, and this, particularly in the big fight scene, they were all like football lads. And we said to them right the way through the shoot, if you see anything at all, the tiniest detail, if you think it's wrong, tell us straight away, and we'll change it straight away. If we agree with you, we'll change it straight away. Because once you filmed it, it's too late. And we wanted to get everything right. The detail had to be right. And one of the people we had down was Andy Nichols, who wrote Scully. Fantastic. He's such a brilliant bloke, Andy. And he was there right throughout. And he was checking out stuff and saying, no, this wouldn't happen, that wouldn't happen. They wouldn't wear this, they wouldn't do that. We were all doing it. We were all checking it all the way through just so we could get it right. Because in a movie like this, the devil's in the detail. Because you're writing about a culture which a lot of people are quite close to it. It's very important to them. Part of their DNA in some respects. And if you get it right, you're halfway there. Get it wrong, it'll ruin a movie. I mean, look at Green Street and Charlie Hunnam's accent. Still talk about it now.
Well, we could talk about that later, can't we?
Yeah. But it's you've got to get it right, and that's part of the script development. It's all one and the same. Top Dog, the script was rewritten 17 times.
Sorry, did you say rewritten 17 times then?
I did.
So for our audience, the premise of Top Dog, the novel, is centred around Billy Evans and his friend Graham Hawkins, known as Hawk. They're best friends since school. Billy has a successful business, but he also runs, and I've got to get this right now because I've had too many acronyms over the last few days. It's the AC in Top Dog. Is that correct, Dougie?
I think so, yeah.
The acting casuals.
Acting casuals, yeah.
Yeah, AC. So they are the West Ham United football hooligan firm who arrange to have fights with other firms. Billy and Graham come up with a really good idea to, what happens first of all is Billy goes to a pub and realises that his family friends or Aunt Sal is being extorted by somebody. But not only are they being extorted, several pubs and clubs, or 3 or 4 dozen pubs and clubs are being extorted by a guy called Mickey James. Billy makes a stand against Mickey James in the novel and comes to an arrangement with him, which we don't really know. We don't really find out until maybe midway really what's going on. But Billy and Hawk, they start a security business and eventually end up trying to win the business of the West Ham United security contract. And I think that's really, for me, Dougie, where the book kind of picked up a little bit, because I think you mentioned earlier on, your books are kind of maybe aimed at working class blokes. So you've got your fantasy fiction, you've got your horror fiction, you've kind of got your chick lit. But where is the bloke who works at a factory, goes to the football of a weekend? Where is the book for him? And I really identified with Hawk. I think it was like I could see like kind of myself in him, where he's got a wife and he's struggling to find a job, and he's got a best friend who's doing well for himself. What he has got is the football violence. Not that I ever got him involved in football violence, of course. But then he's given an opportunity to start a business with his friend, and he excels. And all he needed was that little opportunity, and that's all he was focused on was making that business as good as it possibly could. And I could identify with that. And I followed the book. And I don't know about you, Richie, but it was really easy for me to read because I could identify with the characters and what they were doing.
Yeah, it was really easy for me to read because I had somebody else reading it to me.
You know what I mean?
There's a lot of people out there who don't read books because they find them hard to follow, keep up with, or they've just never been book readers. But I would say to anyone, you can read this. Anybody could read this. And it's not that it's simple. It's just it speaks to the common person, but it's written in a way that's not self-indulgent. It's not pretentious. It's real. It feels real. It sounds real. You can relate to it.
That's all by design. I mean, I learned really quickly. I'm not blowing my own trumpet. We worked out when Eddie and I first did our non-fiction stuff, because neither of us were writers. Neither of us had ever written anything before. So we worked out, how are we going to do this? And one of the things we worked out was how to construct the narrative of the book. And we realized that as just two working class blokes, there's only three places we read. We read on a toilet, in bed, or on a train on the way to work, or a fourth on holiday. Or we read that's when we read everything. So we constructed the book in short chunks. So you can read one chunk, or you can read 10 chunks, or you can read every chunk in one go. But you can dip in and out of the book and pick up the story. You're not going to be lost. The book will carry you along. And I carried that through into fiction as well, which is why it means a lot to me that you say it's really easy to read and really relatable, because that's exactly what I wanted to do. That's exactly why I wrote it in the style it is. In terms of the characters, I based every single character on somebody I know. And I do that in a particular way. I do it as soon as I want to develop a character, I find the name, get their name, get their face. So I work out in my head what they look like, what they walk like, everything about them. And then I get their voice. I put a voice to that character. And it can be anybody, that, as long as it fits the character in my head. So it can be my mate Pete, or my mate Neil, or Robbie Williams, or anybody. And the reason I do that is because if I get stuck, if I don't know how they're working, I'll just put on YouTube, or I'll ring them up and have a conversation, and it'll clear my head and I know exactly what they're going to say or what they're going to do next. It's a really simple trick, but it works. And the idea was always to keep them as real as possible. So you give a guy a job, you give him a struggle with his. I mean, by the time we get to Top Dog, Billy and Hawkins are really out of the hooligan world anyway. They're just these kind of high level figures, but they're above the nuts and bolts of running around on train stations. They still get involved in stuff if it presents itself, but they're kind of their excitement, their buzz comes from the organisation, about watching what goes on, being involved in that level of stuff, not running up and down streets. They've been there, done that. This is the next phase. And so, I just kind of got those characters as tight as I can, but at the core of it, they're just two working class blokes.
You were saying earlier about how when you're on set and you've got the guys in, you've got the geezers from off Facebook, and you're asking them questions like, if there's anything out of place, let us know, because, like you say, the detail is important. But reading the book, or listening to the book as I did, I found that the detail was also there in the book, which makes me wonder, did you come from that kind of a background where you was maybe involved in it? It's just like the attention to detail is amazing. It's like only somebody who's been there and done it would probably know all this.
I've been going to football since the mid-60s, so I was around that culture, even when it was really bad in the 70s. And then I was in the Air Force, so I was away a lot, but I was still managing to get to games. And I'm a Watford fan, so we were never the ICF or Chelsea Headhunters. But we were going to every game home and away. Where often, certainly in 82, 83, when hooliganism was really at its, on its way up towards 85, when it really peaked. Everywhere you went, there was trouble, and everyone was looking. When Watford went up into the first division, we were fair game for everybody. So everybody was after us. We were going to games with, grounds we'd never been to before, Anfield and, White Hart Lane, Highbury, places like that. So you learn about that culture because you're immersed in it. You know what it's like. You know what it's like. You know what people wear. You know how people act. You know how they speak. You know the variables of, Newcastle and Portsmouth, and part of my job as the writer is to put guys like you into the middle of that. Because if I can make, as you said before, if I can make you, there's another thing about my novels, okay? I don't do them flowery. I don't do flowery descriptive. I leave a lot open for you, the guys who are reading, to do themselves. I leave you to paint the pictures of what the characters look like, because subconsciously you'll paint it as someone you know or you've seen. So you're instantly relatable to those characters if they're not you. So immediately, you're immersed in the book, but it also enhances the reading experience. That's all kind of by design. And I think it, from even listening to you two, it clearly works.
Yeah, I have to tip my hats off to you as well, like with the film, because, like I say, the book's relatable and it feels real. But you've done that with the film as well, and I think you find that a lot with British films. British films feel a lot more real than American Hollywood films, but in particular, the way you've translated this book into the film, when you watch the film, it doesn't feel like you're watching people acting like it does with Hollywood sometimes or American films. It feels really, this could be a guy actually going around the streets with a camera on his chest or something. It feels real. That's what I love about British films, but in particular, this Top Dog, it just smashed it out of the ballpark.
Oh, thank you very much. It's you aspire to that sort of stuff, but it takes an awful lot of work. We had a phenomenal cast in it. Leo was brilliant. Ricky Harnett was amazing. You've got someone like Vince Reagan, who was bloody terrifying. And to see them put your words onto screen is an astonishing thing. It's why why I do what I do, just to get for those moments where you see it. The thing about Top Dog is, I don't think it gets the credit it deserves, really. It's a great movie. I think it's a great movie. Certainly my favourite of the movies I've ever done. But it just doesn't seem to get the recognition it deserves. I don't know why. No, people just don't seem to know about it. It's very strange.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned about Vincent Regan's menacing presence on screen, Dougie, because I think if anyone knows who Vincent Regan is, I think maybe it's his Scottish accent and his physical presence that, like, when he speaks, and especially in that kind of low, soft kind of Glaswegian accent, you're like, oh. But then I was like, oh, hang on, he's doing an Irish accent. He's actually got some skill because it sounds Irish and it's a Scottish man doing an Irish accent. And I was really impressed and I was like, that's absolutely amazing. I can't believe it.
Quick story on that. There's a scene in the movie where he's talking to Ricky Harnett's character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's it. That's in the club after the big fight.
Yeah. Where he's and Ricky Harnett, and it was really weird because you as a writer, you kind of in your head you know how the movie's going to play out. You've seen the movie 1,000 times, so when you see someone actually performing it for the camera and they don't do it how you imagine it, it can get really frustrating. But you can't say anything because they're putting their interpretation on what you've written. In the case of that scene, where Vincent is standing over Ricky Harnett and talking that really low Irish accent, and Ricky is visibly shrinking in fear.
Yes. Uh-huh.
That was exactly how I imagined it. And when they shot that scene, I walked outside and started crying.
Oh.
It was unbelievable. And Vincent Regan came out and said, "Are you all right?" And I said, and I just told him basically what I said to you. And he said, "Script's brilliant." He said, "You make it really easy." And I'm like, wow, that's, it was amazing. It was an amazing moment. Absolutely.
That was something I picked up on, actually. The accent, it's like you stated in the book. The Irish guy, he didn't have a southern accent like he was expecting. It was more of a soft northern tone. And when I watched the film, it was exactly that. It was perfect to how I pictured it in the book.
Yeah, that's great. That's really nice to hear. It was phenomenal to watch the guy work. To watch him all work, really. But he is a master. He's a master of his art. He was exactly what we needed him. he's bloody terrifying.
He's terrifying in everything he does. Now, you mentioned this earlier on, Dougie, and you kind of keep getting all my questions before I get to ask you the questions. The question was, when you're writing the characters, do you have someone in mind, which you've already discussed? But when you were writing Top Dog, as an example, are you thinking, if this gets turned into the film, I want such and such to play this person, or does that not cross your mind at the time?
That's a really good question. The answer is no, you don't. You don't play the mythical casting game until afterwards. I know, you, as I said before, you know in your head what you want, and you hope that the producers are going to go out and find it. The interesting thing about adapting your own book, because with Top Dog was a sequel to The Crew, and in The Crew I had, that character was firmly fixed in my mind. And then all of a sudden, the guy I've got in my mind, who looks a bit like a cross between Peter Kay and Robbie Williams, I suppose.
And is this for Billy Evans, sorry?
For Billy Evans. All of a sudden, that character is Leo Gregory. And it's it was a massive shift in my mindset to have to adapt that. Because I'm writing a book based on a character I'm really familiar with, because I've lived with him for 2 novels, and all of a sudden he looks and sounds and acts completely different. And that was a real shift. And I had, because I knew it was going to be Leo from the outset, it took me quite a while to get a handle on that. The problem is when you go out with Leo, when you go out for a drink with him or go anywhere with him, all you get is people come up to him and say, "You're bother." And even now, it's the most bizarre thing. And but I mean, he loves it. Fair play to him.
Oh, of course,
that was a real shift. That was a really difficult shift for me. It's like having another actor play James Bond, I suppose.
Well, yeah, I mean, you see, because when I was reading the book, because I've seen Top Dog before, but many years ago. But when I was reading the book, I had in my head, for me particularly, someone like Frank Harper, like that kind of character. Big, stocky, mean-looking chap who could command respect from people without having to do anything, so to speak. Who wasn't afraid, who wasn't scared of having a fight or being in a fight kind of thing. And then when I watched the movie again, because I watched it 3 or 4 days ago, and I saw Leo Gregory, I was like, that's not what I imagined. However, it's bother. So clearly it works.
It is a difficult one, because I mean Bob has become such an iconic character, but he pulls it off. He does it. He's great. But I know what you mean. It was a difficult one. I mean, I never had him down as a Frank Harper in terms of physical size. Slightly smaller. I can describe him now. It's just mad. I can still see him in my head and hear him. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy.
And so for you, and obviously you've already mentioned that you're a Watford fan. So why was it West Ham that you've kind of focused on more in the novel Top Dog and the movie Green Street rather than a Watford, as an example?
Oh gosh, would you read a hooligan novel about a Watford fan?
But for me, being in the Midlands, it makes no difference to me. If you see what I mean, I get it. I mean, it's right. The thing was, Green Street was not supposed to be about West Ham and Millwall. It was supposed to be about Arsenal and Tottenham. No, that makes more sense to British people. That would make more sense. Yeah, a bit like Villa and Blues.
It was changed because one of the American producers had heard about Millwall as this big hooligan firm, and so they insisted on the change. Okay. And it was fine. I'd written The Crew anyway by then, and in The Crew they were West Ham fans because I know a lot of West Ham lads. I know, my wife's from Essex, so I had a familiarity with that area and the type of people. I had people I could call on for background, for background information on the surrounding areas and stuff like that. And I'd go and have a wander around Upton Park and places.
I must congratulate you though, Dougie, because I think within the first 3 or 4 minutes of the movie, Top Dog we're talking about now, you mentioned the villa. So I have to say thank you very much for that.
Oh, did I?
Yeah, I think there was in the pub and they were talking about maybe the scrap they'd had the previous week. And they went, yeah, them bloody villa. And I was like, yes, he's mentioned the Villa. He's mentioned the Villa. Because it's usually, quote unquote, the Zulus, which for our listeners is Birmingham City. It's always them. So Villa got a mention. I was like, yes, Villa's got a mention, not just the Blues.
Yeah, I used to like going to Villa, and I also used to race stock cars in Birmingham. So I used to pass.
Oh, really? Down was that down Adderley Park?
Up at the wheels,
Birmingham wheels.
So past Villa almost at least 2 or 3 times a month.
So author, screenwriter, stock car racer.
Oh yeah,
RAF sergeant as well. Let's get that CV correct, shall we? Let's get that CV correct. So there's a lot of differences in the film. Where did when we spoke to your brother Eddie, he'd mentioned that he'd had a conversation with Lionsgate about making a film, and he'd produced a script, and they were asking things like, can you put a love interest in? Can you do this? Can you do that? And Eddie was a bit dumbfounded. He's like, no, I don't really want to put love interest into this script because it isn't where it is. But in the movie, I'd put a note here, girly chats at the nail bar. Was that something that the studio had asked for? Is that something that you put in there different to the movie, just to kind of add a different element to the script, perhaps?
No, I wanted to... I wanted to give a bit of depth to the character and the story, and I wanted to show another side to him as well. You know, the fact that they have a life, football isn't their life. You know, it's just their hobby. But it's also because, and I learned this really, really early on in my writing career, hooliganism as a story is really boring. You know, bloke goes from A to B, has a fight and comes back to A. It's really boring after a while. So you've got to actually give, you know, if you read Top Dog and The Crew to a lesser extent, and certainly In the Know, hooliganism is there, but it's the fuel that drives the engine of the story. And one of the reasons why a lot of these, you know, with respect to other authors, I don't mean to decry anyone, but other books about football hooliganism, one of the reasons they don't last in terms of longevity is because there is no story. You know, the story is pretty one-dimensional. So you've got to give depth to it. You've got to add characters in. You need females in a story because you've got to keep it interesting. You've got to keep it relatable. You know, it's football hooliganism is by its very nature, it's kind of schizophrenic lifestyle because it's only one day a week. You've got 6 other days to fill. You know, you're not like the Bad Blue Boys in, you know, wherever, you know, or the Italian Ultra where it's 24/7. We don't do that here. You know, it's something you do on a match day and then you go back to normality. And so you need the normality, you know. For Billy, normality is walking the line between right and wrong. That's what he does. And he's got a wife and he's got kids. And, you know, Graham Hawkins has got a wife who hates Billy with a vengeance, and they can't have kids. So, which is a source of much upset to him, you know, and they're just real characters, you know. And as you said before, you've got to make the characters relatable because otherwise they're instantly forgettable.
I completely get that. I mean, you're adding dimensions to the characters because at the end of the day, like you say, you want us to be able to relate to the characters. And if you just got a one-dimensional character with no personality, no background, nothing, how am I going to relate to that character? It's just they might as well be just like an extra in the story. We've talked about like the differences between the book and the film and everything. I mean, we haven't really talked about the differences, but to anybody who's watched the film out there listening to this, I would urge anyone to read the book. If you love the film, definitely read the book. Don't think that there's no point reading the book because it's the same thing. It's a completely different beast. It's the same story, but from a completely different angle. It's the same, but completely different. And I mean, completely different, but it's still just as good. Would you say that the differences between the book and the film were put in there because of, you know, with a book, you're not constrained by time, whereas with a film, you've got an hour and a half? Yeah,
the film came from the book. So, you know, when I wrote the book, I never thought we would do the movie. I mean, years and years ago, we almost filmed The Crew. We got very, very close. And but I never thought we would ever film Top Dogs. So it was a case of this is a standalone story. I need it to be not complex. I need it to be very relatable, but really interesting. And it needs to be, you know, as I said before, I don't do flowery stuff. So the story is bang, 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 all the way through. Well, if you're going to do that, you've got to have a strong story. And in the case of the book, you've got 3 strong stories, which all come together right at the end. And, that was kind of the same in The Crew. It's certainly the same in the Know, which takes Billy into a whole different world. So, yeah, there's, it's for you to say, the book's much better than the film is kind of both flattering and music to my ears, because I think the book is pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, so obviously one of the biggest differences between the book and the movie is that in the book, again, Hawke, and we're going to talk about Graham Hawkins. He's got a wife, and as you said, hates Billy. Probably thinks that Billy's leading Graham astray and isn't doing Graham any favours. In the book, Graham's struggling to find work. Billy gives him the opportunity, but in the movie, Billy and his wife, is it Julie? In the book stroke movie, I can't remember if they got the same name in the film, but she's pregnant, she's having a baby, and spoiler alert, with all these issues with Mickey, Billy and Mickey have a face off. Billy tells Mickey, "You're not taking money out of this pub anymore." This is in the film. "You're not taking this money out of this pub anymore. It's my manor, it's my pub. You stay away." Now Mickey is very, very brave in front of about 10 or 12 really, really hard blokes and just says, "Well, we've got a problem then." Now, Billy expects the problem to come to him, but in the movie, he smashes at the pub. He sends flowers to Hawke's house saying, "See you soon." And there's a scene where Billy's wife's giving birth in the bath. She phones Billy at the pub, and as Billy's running home, he gets attacked by Mickey James's thugs and he's killed. And I was wondering what your thought process was there, Dougie, considering that he doesn't die in the book or have any of that issue in the book.
It was purely because of that whole storyline. Because in the book, Billy is desperate for Hawke's wife's approval.
Mm-hmm, yes,
because it's his best mate, and he can't go around there because this woman hates his guts. But in the movie, that was one of the threads that we had to change. And so to make the story flow, we had to have something which kind of flips Billy over a little bit. And that was it. That was what we came up with. We had to just make that adaptation. And it's different from the book, but it works in the movie.
Obviously, in the book as well, I think in what we could probably call the third act, Billy is approached by somebody at a West Ham function who has got a problem with his own football team, which I think was Leyton Orient, if I'm correct there, Dougie.
Yeah.
And basically, Leyton Orient are struggling for money. They've got this young Irish footballer, and basically, if this lad gets injured so he can never play again, the club will get a couple of £1 million out of the compensation from the insurers and actually be okay and not have a problem financially and be back on the track. And this chap Simpson approaches Billy about it. So Billy thinks, "Well, I'll do it myself for $100,000, no problemo," and goes out and crushes the lad in between two cars. And that's where the Irish connection kicks in the book, and the Irish lads come in basically for revenge. In the movie, it's not really like the Irish people are connected with Mickey James in the movie, but it's not really explained why, I don't think. I mean, unless I miss something, it's kind of like, we put a lot of money into you. What are you messing about for? And then obviously you get the vengeance, you kind of get the confrontation at the end, but it wasn't really explained, I don't think, what was like the backstory to them. Like, was there any particular reason for that?
I thought it was self-explanatory.
Okay.
He was obviously the main guy in some sort of Irish mob, like the Consigliere or something, and Mickey just got involved with them somehow. That's the way it came across to me. He wasn't anything more than just the main boss of the firm or the Irish mob. It was just as simple as that in the film. But like I say, in the book, it was completely different. Mickey and Billy were a good mate, and it was in the film it was Mickey that got crushed, and in the book it was the young lad that got crushed, which painted for me a different picture of Billy in the book to the film, because I knew that Billy had it in him to be a nasty person, what with the football hooliganism and everything, but the way he got off on crushing a 17-year-old, and he got off on it, and he had to go on holiday to sort his head out because he was just getting such a high off it, made him come across like a real evil bastard that had karma coming his way. Whereas in the film, you didn't feel that way towards him?
I mean, you're always going to get more in a book. That's because you've got more room to develop a story, and you're sitting there. If you're watching a movie, you haven't, as a viewer, you haven't got the luxury that you have as a reader of like developing the story in your own head, developing that character and the background to it. So it's I'd always say, if there's a book, read the book, because you're going to get more out of it.
Well, we always come to the conclusion that we, most of the time, prefer the book over the movie, don't we, Richie? And I think that's the main reason why, is because you've got your own interpretation of the character. You've got 300 pages to get used to a character or characters. Yeah. So to speak, and then when you watch it produced on the screen, you're like, well, that didn't happen. And I think that's the main reason why we do this podcast, Dougie, is to have that conversation. Well, just with me and Richie, really. And I've got to say, actually, you are pretty much the apex of what we're trying to do with the podcast, where we've got the author of the book and the screenwriter and the writer of the film on the podcast, and we're having that conversation about why you've done things the way you've done things. And I don't think we really ever need to do the podcast again, do we,
No,
Richie?
we've peaked. After this episode, we don't need to do another one.
We've fluffed it. We've completely fluffed it. Yeah, we've peaked. Unless we can get Stephen King on, right, then that is literally, we've completely peaked when it comes to having that conversation. Because normally we have the conversation.
Stephen King can fuck off, I hate his work.
And listen, just because the Tommyknockers never came out, Richie, and we had to read 900 pages of nonsense.
Completely put me off him for the rest of my life.
900 pages.
Of absolute bullshit.
And we didn't even do the podcast.
Ouch.
Okay. So, right. Okay. So we could talk about the film all day long, but we've discussed some of the differences. We've discussed some of the reasons why things were changed and why they weren't changed. So I think we should move on really to the recast segment. Richie, is there any actors that you would recast in this movie?
No, I honestly don't think I would. They all played a brilliant part. We were talking about Green Street. That's a completely different thing. But this for Top Dog, no, I think everyone played the part perfectly.
Dougie, quick question for you: as the writer of the book and the movie, did you get any kind of input on the casting?
No.
Okay, so
I didn't want any.
Okay, that's interesting.
The reason being is I know who I don't want. Where how do I put too fine a point on this? There are people I would never work with in a million years, and I don't mean like the Brad Pitts of this world. I mean the jobbing actors of this world, because in the kind of genre that you're doing Top Dog in, you need to have that. If you're going to be an actor in a leading role, you need to have that background. You can't fake it. So you're right. I said earlier that this isn't a movie about hooliganism, but it is kind of a movie about football. So you've got to know football. If you don't know football, you're not going to be in this movie. End of story. So those are one of the questions we'd have earlier. Do you go to football? Who do you support? Blah, blah, blah. Because you've got to understand the culture surrounding football, the match day culture, the pub culture, all those things, because you can't teach them to people. You can't fake them, really. So I did my first movie was a short movie called It's a Casual Life.
Sorry, Dougie, just to interrupt you there, which is a fantastic film.
Thank you.
And I think for the 15 minutes that it is, you get the complete insight into what that football life is all about, and you get the narrator who kind of explains everything and the camaraderie in the pub. And I think the fight itself, or the ending, that fight between I think it is the Birmingham side and the London side. I can't remember if it was actually a nominated football team, but was very, very realistic for a start. And secondly, very brutal. And you kind of felt sorry for a lot of the people, like especially the guy who got slashed at the end. But one of the things that I think kind of threads between these football films, whether it be The Firm with Gary Oldman, whether it be ID, whether it be Green Street or Top Dog, it's professional people. It's people with like executives, dentists, doctors, publicists, or in Green Street, airline pilots. And that's what they do for their job. And to relax, they like to go and have a massive fight of a weekend. It's not just mindless thugs who work in warehouses, is what I'm trying to get at. It's people from all walks of life who that's their release.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things I wanted to do in Top Dog, which wasn't done in Green Street, was because you alluded to it before. You've got a character like Billy who's been a really successful, runs his own business and all this stuff, and his best mate and his right hand man is Graham Hawkins, who's unemployed and can't get a job. Yet on match days, they're equal of each other and they're treated completely equally. And it's one of the reasons people go to football is to forget all that crap. When you go to football, you're just a football fan. It's one of the issues I have with the modern game, which has tried to politicize itself and, drape itself in all these various causes, which is contrary to why I ever go to football, why I ever went to football. I don't want that. I don't want to see political stuff at football because it's not why I go. Because all you're going to get is division. This is what we've certainly seen at Watford over the last few years.
Less said about Watford, the better, eh, Dougie?
Yeah, don't get me started. So it was important that I, certainly again in Top Dog, that I put across the fact that these are just, this is their lifestyle for one day a week. It's what they do. It's, even going back to Green Street. Green Street was always, the initial pitch for Green Street was to make a British fight club. That's what we wanted to do.
And that comes across actually very well.
All of the producers on Green Street were women, and they just didn't get it. They wanted to do it as a buddy movie, which is what they kind of pitched it as in America. So you had almost like this affair between Charlie's character and Elijah's character. And when it could have been so much more and so much better. But we will talk about that in part 2 of this podcast. But just very quickly, Dougie, so just from what we said about the recast, is there anybody that you would fantasy recast in Top Dog? No.
Okay, cool. Well, I've got a couple. And I think I'd already mentioned Frank Harper instead of Leah Gregory. And I think that's only because what I was imagining when I was reading the book, kind of that big burly, no nonsense kind of chap. But I'd also had Tamer Hassan in that role as well. And I think obviously he'd probably, was it the Football Factory? Because actually that's a very good question, Dougie, because Football Factory come out in 2004 and Green Street come out in 2005. But had you started writing the script, pre-production, by the time that the Football Factory had come out?
Yeah. We were about 2 years into it.
Yeah. Was there a big fucking hell when you saw that come out? Or was that,
no, because I knew it was going to come. I mean, it was obviously going to come at some point because it was, this is very contentious. Mm-hmm. I don't like the book. There's just something about the Football Factory I don't like. I can't put my finger on what it is, but it's just like, it's kind of me. I've never seen the film. No intention of ever watching it. I don't mean that as any disrespect to anybody. It's just like, I've only seen Green Street twice, Well,
it's your own work though, isn't it? I think it's a bit different when you watch your own work back.
We don't listen to this podcast back.
Bollocks. That's why it's still shit, because we don't learn from our mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really weird thing to say. I mean, in terms of recasting, I think that's disrespectful to the people we've got in. Are there people I would have liked to have seen in it? Probably not. I think in terms of who we had on Top Dog, everyone hit. Everybody hit the mark. Even, Susan Penhaligon, who played Sally at the bar, it was just amazing.
No, she was fantastic. And it is very rare that we have anyone for a recast, Dougie. It's like we do, and it's genuine. We do kind of struggle, think who would be better. And I think when we did our last episode which was, well, not our last episode, which was First Blood, but when we did Die Hard, it was like, who would be better than Bruce Willis?
Well, exactly.
And it's like nobody. Well, maybe Kurt Russell at the very, like if we were really stretching, but like, Bruce Willis was perfect in Die Hard, and and the whole cast was perfect, also available in our archives. But I had Frank Harper down in my head when I was reading the book, and I think that's the kind of person I was imagining. But with Ricky Harnett, again, when I'm reading the book, I kind of had a Neil Maskell or a Jeff Bell in my head. Someone who can come across as completely vicious and violent and horrible and hateful.
I get what you're saying about Jeff. I mean, he's brilliant.
Yeah, because it feels like he's just going to hurt you and bite your face off, and you hate him, and there's nothing you can do because he's so scary.
Yeah, I think Ricky's got that. I think Ricky's got that. Really,
Ricky's a very, very good. He's a very, very good actor. I loved him. I loved him in Rise of the Foot Soldier 2, and I thought he was very, very good in Psychosis as well, which is a great British film. And I think anyone who likes horror films, who likes thrillers, should go and watch that film because it's absolutely brilliant. And it also has Charisma Carpenter in it. And so if anyone likes Charisma Carpenter or attractive women in general,
you're such a fucking geek.
Oh, fuck you, man. There's nothing wrong with liking British films, Richie.
Yeah, I mean, I'd work with Ricky in a heartbeat, and Jeff and Leo. I wouldn't hesitate. I just think they're quality. Then they're underused. That's the real tragedy. For me,
I think probably pigeonholed really is the issue you've got there, really, isn't it? Especially within the British drama. But we'll have this conversation. Actually, this is one of the conversations that I want to have with you in our next episode regarding Green Street, and especially the actors that you've used. But as far as the recast, so soundtrack. Now, you'd mentioned this earlier on, Dougie. Did you use any Spandau Ballet music? The
soundtrack is one of the bones of contention I have with the movie.
Did you have Kasabian? Was it Kasabian you had, or was that for Green Street? Or no, that was for Top Dog, wasn't it?
I think it was Kasabian in Top Dog. Yeah. I mean, I don't know enough about the music side of what went on to comment really. But again, it's do you put music? What kind of music do you put in a movie about football violence and about that kind of stuff? It's
we have Kasabian. I think that's the kind of, that was the time, that was the kind of the vibe. I mean, normally I normally reach to the Prodigy and go, smack my bitch up in there.
When there's fight scenes, stick some drum and bass in, like a Prodigy or something like that. But I think mainly, I'd reckon 98% of the film wouldn't need any soundtrack at all. Anything. I don't think it'd need anything. Maybe just the action scenes. But other than that, I don't think it needs anything.
No, it's perfect the way it is. If you're adding little bits in there, I mean, I can think of that one Kasabian song that kind of works very well. But then that's just a song. It's not an album or a soundtrack, so to speak. So we're moving swiftly on. Now, we say which is better, but...
Very nice.
Say again, sorry, Dougie.
All this high praise I'm getting. It's very nice.
That's because you're here, Dougie.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should hear what we say about you behind your back.
You wouldn't be the first.
So Richie, okay, so this is for Richie now. So Richie, what is your star rating out of 10 for the book?
10.5.
You fucking arse licker.
No, if I'm being absolutely honest, I was enthralled with the book. Like I say, and it's not just because you're here, because we are absolutely honest. This book, I was engrossed. It felt real, and for when something feels real, I enjoy it more. And I'd easily give this 9.5. The book. And if you're asking me which was my favourite out of the two, the movie and the book, I'd give the movie an 8.5. So my favourite's the book, I would say.
Okay, cool. Well, I would give the book an 8. I really enjoyed it. It was very, very easy to read. I enjoyed the characters. I felt the pressure on Billy throughout the whole film. Even though maybe I couldn't maybe relate to Billy as much as I related to Hawks, as an example.
Yeah, that's cool.
I still felt the pressure on Billy all the way through the film. And I think it's maybe what you said earlier on, Dougie, whereas Billy was desperate for Hawk's wife's approval. And I think a lot of what he did, and looking back, a lot of what he did was for Julie's approval. He just wanted her to go, it's okay to be with Billy.
I think we fucked up here, Phil. I think we fucked up. I think what we've done is that our professional etiquette's gone clean out the fucking window. I don't think we're supposed to do this in front of the author.
No, we're not. But this never happened before. So, this is a different episode altogether. For the movie, I'd probably give the movie a 7. It's a little bit difficult when you like the book so much and then you watch it and you're like, it's not exactly like the book, but it was still enjoyable to watch. And there was still that tension. I felt there was still that tension there throughout the movie as well. And then the one bit that got me, or the takeaway for me, was when Billy said, Hawk's not here for the meet up because he's waiting for the baby. And when they moved to the pub, I was like, oh, fucking Hawk's going to die, isn't he? Bastard's gonna fucking kill him. And it was just like, no. But we did miss takeaways, and I've got to say there was 2 parts in the film that I really liked, and one that I want to ask you about, Dougie. The first one was the fight in the Chinese takeaway, which I absolutely loved. And I think in the book it was a little bit different because Billy had gone outside and waited for the guy, and that's where I kind of got that. That's where I got. It's not Frank Miller, is it? When I was talking about who was going to play him, I've kind of got that kind of idea there. But in the movie, when he'd had enough and he just stood up and the little kid's gone, what are you going to do about it? And it was bang, bang. And they just threw him through the window. I was like, that's fucking fantastic. That is cinematic. That's what you need to see, isn't it? Rather than just waiting outside. And then we went, yeah, love, there's some money. Close tomorrow, fix your window. And then didn't walk through the door, didn't walk through the smash window, just opened the door and walked out. I thought that was brilliant. But the one thing I wanted to ask you about, Dougie, was the car crushing scene, because I'd seen something like that in Strike Back before when they were doing the behind the scenes. And there's a chap in like a little cage, but he's still getting hit by the car. But obviously, like, because of the camera angles, it looks like he's really been hurt. How was that scene filmed with Ricky Hartnett being crushed by the cars?
It took all day of faffing about and rehearsing. And in the end, we had to rush it because we were losing light. It was, I can't remember how they did it. It was a long time ago now. But the actual crash was done really quickly. That was done at the end. And the bit where he squashed was done really slowly, a bit before that, obviously, because you've only got one Ricky.
Well, I was going to say, so that was him actually doing it rather than like a stuntman, like, standing
there. As I recall, that was him doing it. But as I say, it was a long time.
I can imagine that conversation. Right, Phil, so you asked for you and Ritchie to be in this scene. So what's going to happen is this tank's going to run over you, but don't worry, right? Yeah. I don't think it's going to hurt you.
Not going to do it properly. No, I mean, we had a proper stunt team doing it.
Of course you did. No,
they knew exactly what they were doing. And it was rehearsed over and over and over and over again. So, but it was essential to the movie. It was essential, just as it is in the book. It's very different in the book because it's very dramatic.
Well, those were my takeaways. Richie, have you got any takeaways from the movie?
From the movie, my main takeaway is Jason Fleming is in every single gangster film from Britain ever. All of them. Whenever anybody says, I'm going to do a British gangster film or something to do with football violence, Jason Fleming must put his hand up and go, I'll do that. I'll do that.
Well, that was that. He was down to Leo.
Oh, okay.
Leo
got friends, are they?
Leo got him in for the day. And when, you're doing a relatively low-budget movie and Jason Fleming says, I'll be in it, he's in it.
Of course he did.
That's why he's in everything. And so, and I wanted to film, I love scrapyards. So I wanted to film in a scrapyard, so it was a no-brainer.
Of course, being a stock car racer.
Yeah,
it makes more sense now. I'm like, because he was saying, get it back to me. I want to do some stock car racing. I'll have this on the track within 3 days. And then that was obviously in the book and the movie, it was that kind of married really well. It's like, well, of course we have connections everywhere, don't we? And it was
yeah.
Fucking hell.
That's why I see in the book there's a mention of the stock car yard.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because he said, I'll have it painted yellow and have it on the track by Tuesday. Yeah.
See?
Yeah,
so I knew I wanted to write something about bang racing in Essex. So it went.
I particularly enjoyed in the book the bit where the kid gets crushed and he's stuck and he can't get his earphones out. And he says, and it was at that point he really couldn't give a fuck who the real Slim Shady was.
That was very good.
Yeah. Yes. I in my head, I had that scene in my head. I'd had it in, the idea of someone falling forward and bending the wrong way just fascinated me.
That says a lot about you, I think.
Yeah, I spend my days finding new ways to hurt people. Well, whilst you're lauding Top Dog, if I could recommend that you read In the Know.
Of course.
Because In the Know is even better than Top Dog.
Considering we know how the book ends, I'm very interested to read that as well. And if you're interested in writing that into a script, Dougie, we'll have you back and we'll have a conversation.
You should say that.
Oh, really? Really?
I'm not saying anything else.
Stay tuned for further episodes of Dougie Brimson on Adapted to Screen podcast. Okay, well, I think we've reached the end of our episode, Top Dog versus Top Dog. Dougie, thank you very, very much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. And do listen out for our bonus episode on Green Street, which Dougie will be joining us to discuss all things Green Street. Richie?
Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Whoever's listening, please do us a favour, like and subscribe and all that bullshit. Apparently it helps. So, please do that. Go find Dougie, all of his works. Dougie, where can people find you?
DougieBrimson.com. I'm on Twitter and Facebook as Dougie Brimson, as only me, no trained monkeys. If you come on Twitter, behave yourself. I will not. Don't get involved in much on Twitter these days for various and pretty obvious reasons. It's a bit of a cesspit now.
Yeah, we only use it for promotion.
Yeah, but generally, if it says it's me, it's me. So
excellent.
If it's someone impersonating me, then I'm all for them.
Excellent. Yes. So thank you again, Doug. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we look forward to speaking to you again sometime. Go check out Doug in all of the places that we'll leave in the show notes. Go check us out. Go do all those things. If you enjoyed the show, the episode, or any previous episodes, please leave a comment. Let us know what you thought. Let us know what you think about the films and the books, if you've read them or watched them. It'd be good to hear from you. In our next episode, we will be doing the book 8 o'clock in the morning versus the film They Live. So if you have anything to say about those, feel free to leave a comment on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, and we'll be sure to give you a shout out in the episode. So until next time, this has been the Adapted to Screen podcast. Top Dog, the film, versus Top Dog, the book. Thank you for listening, if indeed you still are.
I've had an idea for a new business. It ain't strictly football, but it does concern the AC in this place. Someone's putting a squeeze on it. And the first thing we got to do is sort out this little firm drain in the till. Awesome faces here next Thursday. Lots of them. Hello, Mickey. Long time no see.
Billy Evans.
This place. It's ours now.
You got that phantom kind of love I need. I lose my mind.
Okay, what up?
Closer, whispering no sweet.
Oi! You wanna fucking done a war with me? I will fucking go war with you any fucking day than what you want. You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
What's going on, Mickey?
Nothing, Pat. It's all right.
This doesn't look like nothing to me. You tell Billy Evans. I'll be seeing him.
Need a driver?
2 yards for one of us! Come on!
Bastard!
It's all a bit lock stock, isn't it? There's no one told you all that football bollocks died out years ago. It's a fucking joke now, fella.
We ain't laughing.